Dr. Sarah Chen stood behind the bright studio lights of Channel 7's morning show, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the microphone clipped to her navy blazer. Across from her, host Jennifer Martinez shuffled through notes about the groundbreaking cancer research that had just earned Sarah international recognition. In her purse, carefully folded, lay a letter that would shatter everything her family believed about success, sacrifice, and sisterly love. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The red recording light blinked on, and Jennifer's practiced smile beamed across millions of breakfast tables. We're here with Dr. Sarah Chen, whose revolutionary work on early cancer detection has just earned her the prestigious Kellerman Research Award. Dr. Chen, congratulations on this incredible achievement. Sarah nodded graciously, but her mind was racing toward the moment when she would reveal the truth that had been buried for 15 years. The truth about another award, another achievement, and the sister who had stolen not just her recognition, but nearly her entire future. If you've ever had someone close to you take credit for your accomplishments, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or if you've ever wondered what happens when buried secrets finally surface, then you understand why this moment matters. Success has a way of revealing the people who celebrated your failures and hid your victories. The story began 28 years earlier in the sprawling suburbs of Westfield, Massachusetts, where the Chen family had built their version of the American dream. Dr. Michael Chen, a respected cardiologist at Massachusetts General Hospital, and his wife Linda, a high school principal, had created what appeared to be the perfect environment for academic excellence. Their colonial-style home, with its wraparound porch and carefully maintained garden, sat on a tree-lined street where every family seemed to have at least one child destined for Harvard or MIT. Sarah was born 3 years after her sister Diana, and from her earliest memories, she was aware that she lived in Diana's shadow. Diana Chen was everything their parents had hoped for in a first child. Beautiful, charismatic, naturally gifted in social situations, and effortlessly successful in school. While Sarah struggled with shyness and had to work twice as hard for every A, Diana glided through honors classes while simultaneously serving as student body president, captain of the debate team, and the star of every school play. Their parents' approach to raising two daughters couldn't have been more different. Diana received constant praise and encouragement, her achievements celebrated with family dinners at expensive restaurants and framed certificates lining the hallway walls. When Diana won the statewide debate championship in her junior year, Dr. Chen took a rare day off from the hospital to drive her to Boston for a celebratory shopping trip. When she was accepted early admission to Yale, Linda Chen called every relative and family friend to share the news. Sarah, by contrast, learned early that her accomplishments were expected rather than celebrated. When she brought home straight A's, her parents nodded approvingly, but without fanfare. "We know you can do well when you apply yourself," her mother would say, as if Sarah's academic success was simply the natural result of adequate effort, rather than exceptional ability. When Sarah expressed interest in science, particularly biology and chemistry, her parents were supportive but practical. "Medicine is a noble profession," her father would say, "but remember that it requires complete dedication. Not everyone is cut out for the competition." The implicit message was clear. Diana was destined for greatness, while Sarah was expected to work hard and achieve respectably. This dynamic might have been merely unfortunate family psychology if not for what happened during Sarah's sophomore year of high school, an incident that would define the trajectory of both sisters' lives and create a rift that seemed impossible to bridge. Westfield High School's annual science research competition was the most prestigious academic event of the year. Students who placed in the top 3 earned automatic consideration for advanced placement programs, scholarship opportunities, and often caught the attention of college admissions officers from top-tier universities. Sarah had been working on her project for months, an innovative study on how certain plant compounds could inhibit cancer cell growth in laboratory cultures. She spent countless after-school hours in the chemistry lab, weekends at the local university library researching peer-reviewed papers, and even convinced her father to let her observe surgical procedures to better understand oncology applications. The research was groundbreaking for a high school student. Sarah had identified 3 plant compounds that showed remarkable promise in slowing tumor growth, and her methodology was sophisticated enough to rival undergraduate research projects. Her chemistry teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was amazed by the depth and quality of Sarah's work. "This is graduate-level research," she told Sarah during one of their after-school sessions. "You've discovered something genuinely significant here. I've never seen anything like this from a sophomore." Meanwhile, Diana was preparing her own entry for the humanities division of the competition, an analysis of economic inequality in American literature. It was well-researched and elegantly written, exactly what everyone expected from Diana Chen. But it lacked the innovation and potential real-world impact of Sarah's scientific discovery. The competition took place on a Saturday in March, with presentations beginning at 8 a.m. and judging continuing through the afternoon. Parents, teachers, and local scientists served as judges, evaluating projects on originality, methodology, presentation quality, and potential applications. Sarah arrived early, her stomach churning with nervous excitement, as she set up her display boards, carefully arranging her data charts, photographs of cell cultures, and a detailed explanation of her compound extraction process. Diana's presentation was scheduled for the same time slot, in the adjacent gymnasium where humanities projects were being judged. Sarah caught glimpses of her sister throughout the morning, confident and poised as she discussed her literary analysis with judges who nodded appreciatively at her insights. When Sarah's turn to present, she felt a surge of confidence she had rarely experienced. The judges were fascinated by her research, asking detailed questions about her methodology and expressing genuine excitement about her findings. Dr. Rebecca Walsh, an oncologist from Massachusetts General Hospital, who served as one of the science judges, was particularly impressed. "Have you considered submitting this work to the National Youth Science Foundation? This level of research deserves broader recognition," she asked Sarah. The award ceremony took place that evening in the auditorium, with families packed into folding chairs and students nervously awaiting results. Principal Johnson began with third-place winners in each category, then second place, building suspense for the top awards. When he reached the science division, Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. Third place in science research goes to Marcus Williams for his study of water pollution in local rivers, Principal Johnson announced. Sarah applauded politely, but her palms grew sweaty. Second place goes to Jennifer Liu for her analysis of renewable energy efficiency. Sarah's breath caught. She was either about to experience the greatest triumph of her young life or crushing disappointment. And first place in science research for a truly extraordinary study on plant compounds and cancer cell inhibition goes to Sarah Chen. The auditorium erupted in applause, but Sarah heard it as if from underwater. She had won. Her work, her months of research, her innovative discovery had been recognized as the best science project in the school's competition. Diana's name was called for second place in humanities, a respectable finish that would have been celebrated in most families. But as Sarah walked across the stage to accept her award, a crystal trophy, a certificate, and a $500 scholarship check, she caught sight of her sister in the audience. Diana was applauding, but her smile looked forced, her eyes cold in a way Sarah had never seen before. Their parents' reaction was a study in conflicting emotions.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Dr. Chen appeared genuinely proud, shaking Sarah's hand firmly when she returned to her seat and saying, "Excellent work, sweetheart. This is quite an achievement." Linda Chen hugged both daughters, but Sarah noticed that her mother's congratulations felt somehow restrained, as if she was unsure how to process having both daughters win awards on the same night, with Sarah's achievement clearly overshadowing Diana's. The ride home was quiet, filled with the kind of tension that Sarah couldn't quite identify. Diana sat in the passenger seat, unusually silent, while Sarah clutched her trophy in the back seat, replaying the evening's events and already imagining how this recognition might open doors for her future. That night, Sarah carefully placed her award on her desk, positioning it where the morning sunlight would catch the crystal facets. She fell asleep imagining college applications that would feature this achievement, scholarship opportunities that might result from Dr. Walsh's encouragement to submit her work nationally, and the possibility that she had discovered her true calling in scientific research. She woke the next morning to find the trophy gone. Panic flooded through her as she searched her room frantically, checking under her bed, in her closet, even in the trash can. The certificate was missing too, along with the scholarship check. Fighting back tears, she ran downstairs to the kitchen where her family was having breakfast. "Has anyone seen my trophy?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "It was on my desk last night, and now it's gone." Diana looked up from her cereal, her expression perfectly innocent. "What trophy?" "From the science competition yesterday? My first place trophy. It was right on my desk." Her parents exchanged glances. Dr. Chen cleared his throat. "Are you sure you brought it upstairs? Maybe you left it in the car." "No, I'm positive I put it on my desk before I went to bed. And the certificate and check are missing too." Linda Chen frowned. "That's very strange. Diana, did you see anything when you went upstairs last night?" "I went straight to my room after we got home," Diana replied smoothly. "I didn't go into Sarah's room at all." They searched the house together, checking every room, every possible place the award might have been misplaced. Nothing. Sarah's triumph had vanished as completely as if it had never existed. When she suggested calling the school to report the missing items, her mother dismissed the idea. "I'm sure they'll turn up," Linda said. "These things don't just disappear. You probably put them somewhere safe and forgot." But Sarah knew she hadn't forgotten. She remembered exactly where she had placed the trophy, could still see it in her mind's eye catching the light from her desk lamp. Someone had taken it, and the only person who had been in the house overnight was family. The disappearance of her award marked the beginning of a pattern that would define Sarah's remaining years in high school. Whenever she achieved something significant, whenever recognition came her way, it seemed to vanish or be minimized before it could take root. Her science fair project the following year won regional recognition, but the invitation to compete at the state level mysteriously never arrived, despite her teacher's assurances that it had been mailed to her home. A letter from MIT expressing interest in her early application disappeared from the mail before she could see it, though Diana helpfully mentioned that she had heard MIT was becoming much more selective and was probably not worth pursuing for someone with Sarah's grades. The academic awards that should have accumulated in Sarah's file throughout high school somehow failed to materialize. Teachers would congratulate her on achievements that, according to her official record, had never happened. Mrs. Rodriguez mentioned several times that she had submitted Sarah's work for various science competitions, but Sarah never heard about results or opportunities to advance. Meanwhile, Diana's star continued to rise. Her wall of achievements grew steadily larger, her college application became more impressive, and her confidence seemed to expand with each success. The contrast between the sisters grew more pronounced with each passing year. Diana was celebrated, recognized, and consistently encouraged to reach higher. Sarah learned to expect disappointment and to question her own memories of success. The psychological impact was devastating in ways that wouldn't become clear until years later. Sarah began to doubt her own abilities, to assume that any recognition she received was either a mistake or would somehow disappear before it could matter. She stopped sharing her achievements with her family, stopped expecting congratulations or support, and gradually withdrew into herself. Her parents, focused primarily on Diana's obvious success and unaware of the systematic undermining happening under their own roof, interpreted Sarah's increasing quietness as a natural personality difference. "Sarah has always been more introverted," her mother would explain to relatives who noticed the stark contrast between the two sisters. "She's very focused on her studies, but she's not as naturally social as Diana." Dr. Chen occasionally worried that Sarah was too solitary, but he attributed it to the normal challenges of adolescence and assumed she would grow out of it. He was proud of her consistent academic performance, even if it lacked the sparkle and recognition that made Diana's achievements so visible. Sarah is steady, he would say. She'll make a good doctor if that's what she wants. Not everyone needs to be a star. The message Sarah internalized was that she was capable but unremarkable, hardworking but not gifted, and certainly not destined for the kind of recognition that came naturally to Diana. She learned to set modest goals, to avoid drawing attention to herself, and to accept that her best efforts would always be overshadowed by her sister's effortless brilliance. During Sarah's senior year, as college applications loomed, the pattern reached its most destructive point. Sarah had spent months working on applications to top-tier universities despite having little confidence that she would be accepted. Her grades were excellent, her SAT scores were impressive, and her passion for scientific research was evident in every essay she wrote. But her application lacked the kind of standout achievements that admissions officers look for, the awards and recognitions that should have accompanied her academic performance. Diana, on the other hand, was accepted to Yale, Harvard, Princeton, and Stanford with multiple scholarship offers and recruitment letters from professors who had heard about her debate achievements and academic excellence.
The contrast was stark and painful. During a family dinner celebrating Diana's acceptances, Sarah mentioned quietly that she had been waitlisted at several good schools and accepted to UMass with a partial scholarship. UMass is a fine school, her father said encouragingly, and a partial scholarship is nothing to sneeze at. You should be proud. Diana nodded sympathetically. It's really competitive out there. I think I just got lucky with my applications. UMass has a good program, and you'll probably do better there anyway. Less pressure. The implication was clear. Sarah belonged at a less prestigious institution where the academic demands would match her more modest abilities. It was a reasonable conclusion based on the evidence everyone could see. Diana had a wall full of awards, recognition from teachers and local organizations, and a track record of leadership and achievement. Sarah had good grades and little else to distinguish her application. What no one knew except Diana was that Sarah's missing achievements would have made her one of the most competitive applicants in the state. The science competition victory, the regional recognition, the state-level opportunities, the National Science Foundation nomination, all of it had been systematically hidden or diverted before it could reach Sarah or become part of her official record. The revelation would not come for many years, not until Sarah had rebuilt her confidence through college and graduate school, proven her abilities through her own research, and finally achieved the kind of recognition that could not be hidden or stolen. But when it did come, it would arrive with the force of an earthquake, reshaping everything she thought she knew about her own history, her family, and the sister she had spent her entire life trying to measure up to. For now, though, as Sarah packed for UMass in the fall, she carried with her the quiet conviction that she was exactly what her family believed her to be: competent but unremarkable, hardworking but not exceptional, destined for a respectable but unspectacular future. It would take years of gradual success, careful mentorship, and eventual breakthrough research for her to discover that her true capabilities had been buried beneath a carefully constructed narrative of mediocrity. The summer before college marked the last time Sarah would live in the family home as a dependent child. It should have been a time of excitement and anticipation, but instead it felt like an extended period of waiting for her real life to begin somewhere else. Diana had already left for a prestigious internship at a political consulting firm in Washington, D.C., an opportunity that had come through connections made during her high school debate career. Her absence left the house strangely quiet, and for the first time in years, Sarah had her parents' undivided attention. Dr. Chen made an effort to spend more time with his younger daughter, sensing perhaps that he had been too focused on Diana's obvious achievements and recognitions. He began including Sarah in conversations about medical school preparation, sharing stories from his own education,
and encouraging her to consider research opportunities at UMass. "The best doctors are those who never stop learning," he told her during one of their evening walks around the neighborhood. "Sometimes the path that seems less glamorous leads to the most meaningful work." Linda Chen also seemed to recognize that Sarah needed encouragement as she prepared to leave home. She helped her shop for dorm room essentials and spoke optimistically about the opportunities that college would bring. "This is your chance to start fresh," she said as they picked out bedding and desk supplies. "College is where you discover who you really are, independent of your family and your history." The irony of her mother's words would not become apparent for many years, but Sarah did indeed use college as an opportunity to discover her true capabilities. Away from the shadow of Diana's achievements and the mysterious pattern of disappearing recognition, Sarah began to flourish in ways that surprised even her. UMass turned out to be an ideal environment for someone with Sarah's combination of intellectual curiosity and determined work ethic. The university's research opportunities were extensive. The faculty was approachable and encouraging, and Sarah's classmates came from diverse backgrounds that made academic collaboration feel natural rather than competitive. During her freshman year, Sarah enrolled in advanced chemistry and biology courses, partly because she had always loved science, and partly because she wanted to prove to herself that she could succeed in challenging academic environments. Her professors noticed immediately that she had an unusual aptitude for research methodology and creative problem-solving. Dr. Patricia Williams, who taught Sarah's organic chemistry course, was particularly impressed by her approach to laboratory work. "You have an intuitive understanding of experimental design," Dr. Williams told Sarah, after she had proposed an innovative solution to a complex synthesis problem. "Have you considered getting involved in undergraduate research? I think you would thrive in a research environment." The suggestion planted a seed that would grow throughout Sarah's college years. She began working in Dr. Williams' laboratory during her sophomore year, initially just cleaning equipment and preparing solutions, but gradually taking on more sophisticated responsibilities as her skills developed. The work was exactly what Sarah had been searching for without knowing it: intellectually challenging, practically meaningful, and entirely dependent on her own abilities rather than comparisons to anyone else. For the first time since high school, Sarah began to receive recognition for her achievements. Her research contributions earned her co-authorship on a paper published in a peer-reviewed chemistry journal. Her innovative approach to a long-standing problem in organic synthesis caught the attention of faculty members beyond her immediate research group. By her junior year, she was leading her own small research project and mentoring newer students in laboratory techniques. The confidence that grew from these experiences was transformative. Sarah began to remember what it felt like to be good at something, to have her work valued and recognized, to feel excited about her own potential rather than resigned to modest expectations. Her grades improved dramatically, not because she was working harder, but because she finally believed in her own abilities again. During her senior year, Sarah's research project on novel cancer-fighting compounds began to show truly remarkable results. Working under Dr. Williams' guidance, she had developed a new method for synthesizing molecules that showed extraordinary promise in preliminary testing. The work was sophisticated enough to attract attention from pharmaceutical companies and medical researchers at major universities. When Sarah applied to graduate programs, her application was completely different from the one she had submitted as a high school senior. This time, she had substantial research experience, publications, strong letters of recommendation from faculty who knew her work intimately, and, most importantly, the confidence that came from proven success. She was accepted to several top-tier PhD programs in chemistry, with full funding and research assistantships. The contrast with her college application process 4 years earlier was stark. Then, she had been waitlisted and accepted to only modest programs. Now she was being recruited by prestigious universities that recognized her potential and wanted her to continue her research at their institutions. The transformation was so complete that Sarah sometimes wondered if she was the same person who had left home feeling like an academic disappointment. Diana, meanwhile, had graduated from Yale with honors and was attending Harvard Law School, continuing her pattern of obvious success and institutional recognition. When the sisters saw each other during family visits, the old dynamics remained largely unchanged. Diana was still the star, still the focus of their parents' pride and attention, still the daughter with the impressive credentials and obvious bright future. But something had shifted in Sarah's perspective. She no longer felt diminished by Diana's achievements or desperate for the kind of recognition that came so easily to her sister.
Her work spoke for itself, her professors valued her contributions, and her future prospects were entirely dependent on her own efforts, rather than family expectations or comparisons. The phone call that would change everything came during Sarah's second year of graduate school at MIT, where she was working toward her PhD in biochemistry. She was in the laboratory late one evening, analyzing data from her latest experiment, when her cell phone rang. The caller ID showed her home number in Massachusetts. Sarah? Her mother's voice sounded strained, older somehow. I need to talk to you about something important. Are you somewhere where we can speak privately? Sarah stepped into an empty conference room, suddenly worried that something had happened to her father or that her mother was ill. What's wrong, Mom? Is everyone okay? Everyone is fine physically, Linda Chen replied carefully, but something has come to light about your high school years, about some awards and recognition that you should have received. I found some papers while cleaning out the attic, and I think there are things you need to know. The conversation that followed lasted nearly 2 hours and shattered everything Sarah thought she knew about her own history. Her mother had discovered a box hidden in Diana's old room, apparently forgotten when she had moved out for college and never retrieved during subsequent visits home. Inside were all of Sarah's missing awards: the science competition trophy, certificates from regional and state competitions, scholarship notifications, college recruitment letters, and even the invitation to compete at the national level that had never reached her. But the most devastating discovery was a stack of letters that Diana had written but never sent, drafts of apologies and explanations that revealed the depth and deliberateness of her actions. In these letters, Diana acknowledged that she had been systematically hiding Sarah's achievements because she was afraid of being overshadowed by her younger sister's obvious scientific talent. I knew from the beginning that Sarah was smarter than me, one letter read. Everyone could see it, even though they pretended not to. She was going to be the one who discovered something important, who made a real difference in the world. I couldn't let that happen before I had established my own identity and success. I told myself it was temporary, that I would eventually tell her the truth, but each hidden award made it harder to confess. The letters revealed that Diana had intercepted mail, convinced teachers that Sarah was not interested in certain opportunities, and even contacted colleges to withdraw applications that Sarah had never known were submitted on her behalf. The scope and duration of the deception was breathtaking in its thoroughness and devastating in its impact on Sarah's educational trajectory. As her mother read excerpts from these letters over the phone, Sarah felt a complex mixture of vindication, rage, and grief. Vindication because her memories of achievement had been accurate, after all. Rage because years of self-doubt and modest expectations had been based on deliberate deception. Grief because the relationship she thought she had with her sister had been built on lies and manipulation. I don't know how to make this right, her mother said, her voice breaking with emotion. I had no idea this was happening. I thought Diana was just naturally more successful, and I failed to recognize what you were accomplishing. I failed to protect you from something I didn't even know was happening. The discovery forced Sarah to reconsider everything about her family dynamics, her own self-perception, and the trajectory of her academic career. How different might her college experience have been if she had entered as a celebrated science competition winner with multiple scholarship offers? What opportunities had she missed because her achievements were hidden before they could open doors? But it also forced her to acknowledge something else. Despite the deception, despite the stolen recognition and hidden opportunities, she had still managed to find her way to exactly where she belonged. Her current research was groundbreaking, her professors respected her work, and her future prospects were excellent. In some ways, the circuitous path had made her stronger and more determined than she might have been with earlier recognition.
The question now was what to do with this information. Diana was finishing her final year at Harvard Law School, still unaware that her deception had been discovered. Their parents were struggling with how to address a situation that called into question not just Diana's character, but their own failure to notice what was happening under their roof. Sarah's first instinct was to confront Diana immediately, to demand explanations and apologies for years of systematic sabotage. But her second instinct was more complex. To use this revelation as an opportunity to finally understand the family dynamics that had shaped both sisters, and to find a way forward that acknowledged the truth without destroying the relationships entirely. The decision about how to handle this discovery would have to wait. Sarah's research was at a critical juncture, with experiments that could not be delayed and deadlines that demanded her full attention. But she knew that eventually she would have to face her sister and the family history that had been built on hidden truths and stolen achievements. What she didn't know was that fate was about to provide the perfect opportunity for that confrontation in the most public and irreversible way possible. The weeks following her mother's revelation passed in a blur of conflicting emotions and intense focus on her research. Sarah threw herself into her laboratory work with an energy that surprised even her most dedicated colleagues. The discovery of Diana's deception had unlocked something within her, a fierce determination to prove that her achievements belonged to her alone, that no one could steal or diminish what she was capable of accomplishing. Dr. Elizabeth Hartman, Sarah's thesis advisor, noticed the change immediately. "You're working with a different kind of intensity lately. Your latest results are exceptional, but I want to make sure you're not burning yourself out." Sarah looked up from the computer screen where she had been analyzing molecular structures for the past 6 hours. "I feel like I'm finally working at my full potential, like I've been holding myself back without realizing it." The truth was more complex than that simple explanation. Learning about Mayana's systematic sabotage had been devastating, but it had also been liberating. For years, Sarah had carried the quiet conviction that she was somehow less capable than she appeared, that her successes were flukes or the result of grade inflation or sympathetic professors. Now she understood that her achievements were not only legitimate, but had been accomplished despite deliberate obstacles placed in her path. The research project that had begun as her doctoral thesis was evolving into something far more significant. Sarah's work on synthesizing novel compounds for cancer treatment had yielded 3 distinct molecules that showed remarkable promise in laboratory testing. One compound in particular, which she had designated SC47 in her lab notes, demonstrated the ability to target specific cancer cells while leaving healthy tissue virtually untouched. Dr. Elizabeth Hartman, Sarah's thesis advisor, had been in academic research for 25 years, and she recognized breakthrough work when she saw it. "Sarah, I think you need to understand the magnitude of what you've accomplished here." She gestured toward the data Sarah had presented during their meeting. "SC47 could revolutionize cancer treatment. This isn't just dissertation material anymore. This is Nobel Prize territory." The suggestion seemed absurd to Sarah, who still struggled with imposter syndrome despite her recent revelations about Diana's deception. "It's just preliminary results," she protested.
We need years of testing before we can make any claims about real-world applications. Of course, Dr. Hartman agreed, but the preliminary results are extraordinary. I think it's time to start thinking about publication in a major journal, maybe Science or Nature, and we should consider applying for additional funding to accelerate the research timeline. That conversation marked the beginning of Sarah's transition from graduate student to recognized researcher. Over the following months, she worked with Dr. Hartman to design comprehensive studies that would test SC47's effectiveness across multiple cancer types. The results exceeded their most optimistic projections. The compound showed significant therapeutic potential against lung, breast, colorectal, and pancreatic cancers, with minimal side effects and remarkable specificity for malignant cells. The publication process moved with unusual speed for academic standards. The peer review committee for Nature was unanimous in their enthusiasm for Sarah's work, with one reviewer calling it the most promising development in targeted cancer therapy in the past decade. When the paper was published, it generated immediate international attention from both the scientific community and the pharmaceutical industry.
Sarah's life changed almost overnight. Interview requests flooded in from medical journals, research institutions, and major news outlets. Pharmaceutical companies began reaching out about licensing opportunities and research partnerships. Universities across the country extended invitations for her to present her findings at prestigious conferences and symposiums. The attention was overwhelming and thrilling in equal measure. For someone who had spent years believing she was academically mediocre, the sudden recognition felt surreal. Sarah found herself fielding calls from researchers at Harvard, Stanford, Johns Hopkins, and the National Institutes of Health, all eager to discuss her work and explore potential collaborations. Dr. Hartman helped Sarah navigate the sudden influx of opportunities. This level of recognition doesn't happen often, she explained as they reviewed a stack of speaking invitations. You need to be strategic about which opportunities you accept. Each appearance will shape how the scientific community perceives you and your work. The most significant invitation came from the Kellerman Foundation, a prestigious organization that annually recognizes groundbreaking research in medical sciences. The Kellerman Research Award was considered one of the highest honors available to early career scientists, with previous recipients including several future Nobel Prize winners. Sarah's work on SC47 had caught the attention of the selection committee, and she was being considered for the foundation's annual award. The Kellerman Award would establish you as one of the leading researchers in your field, Dr. Hartman explained when the invitation arrived. It comes with a substantial research grant, automatic consideration for tenure-track positions at top universities, and the kind of professional recognition that can define an entire career. Sarah stared at the elegant invitation, printed on heavy cream paper with the foundation seal embossed in gold. The awards ceremony would take place in 6 months at the Foundation's annual conference in Chicago, with presentations broadcast live to medical schools and research institutions worldwide. If she won, her work would be recognized by thousands of her peers simultaneously. The irony was not lost on her. 15 years after Diana had stolen her first major academic award, Sarah was being considered for recognition at the highest levels of scientific achievement. The scared, confused teenager who had searched frantically for her missing science fair trophy had become a researcher whose work might save countless lives. But the invitation also forced Sarah to confront the unresolved situation with her family. Diana was still unaware that her deception had been discovered. Her parents were struggling with how to address revelations that challenged everything they thought they knew about their daughter's relative abilities. The truth hung over every family interaction like a storm cloud waiting to break. Sarah decided that she needed to have a direct conversation with Diana before any public recognition made that conversation more complicated. She called her sister on a Thursday evening, when she knew Diana would be home from her law school classes, but before the weekend's social obligations that filled her schedule. "Sarah!" Diana's voice was warm and genuinely pleased. "I was just thinking about you. I heard through Mom and Dad that your research is getting some attention. That's wonderful." The casual dismissal in Diana's tone, the assumption that Sarah's work was receiving modest recognition rather than international acclaim, crystallized everything that had been wrong with their relationship. Diana had been so successful at diminishing Sarah's achievements that she couldn't even conceive of her sister accomplishing something truly significant. "Actually, Diana, I need to talk to you about something important." Sarah's voice was carefully controlled. "Mom found some things in your old room that belonged to me. Awards and letters from high school that I never received." A long silence stretched across the phone line. When Diana finally spoke, her voice had changed completely, the warmth replaced by something that sounded like panic, barely held in check. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The science competition trophy, Diana. The one that disappeared from my desk the night after I won. The regional and state competition invitations. The letters from colleges expressing interest in my research. Mom found all of it in a box in your closet, along with drafts of letters where you explained exactly what you were doing and why." Another silence filled with the weight of 15 years of deception finally being acknowledged. When Diana spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I was going to tell you eventually." "When?"
Sarah asked, her own voice rising despite her efforts to stay calm. After you became a partner at a law firm, after I had settled into a mediocre career that matched the diminished expectations you created, when exactly were you planning to admit that you systematically sabotaged my education? It wasn't supposed to go on for so long, Diana said, and for the first time she sounded like the scared teenager she had been when the deception began. I was just so afraid that everyone would realize I wasn't as smart as they thought I was. You made everything look so easy, and I had to work so hard just to keep up with what people expected for me. So you decided to make sure I never had the chance to show what I was capable of? I told myself it was temporary, Diana continued, tears evident in her voice now, just until I got into college, until I established myself independently.
But then one hidden award led to another, and it became impossible to admit what I had done without destroying everything. Sarah felt a strange mixture of anger and pity. The sister she had idolized and envied had been living with her own kind of prison, trapped by the fear that her success was built on stolen foundations rather than genuine ability. "Do you have any idea what you did to me?" Sarah asked. "How many years I spent thinking I was mediocre? How many opportunities I missed because my achievements were hidden before they could lead to better options?" "I know," Diana whispered. "I've regretted it every day since college started. Watching you doubt yourself, watching you settle for less than you deserved. I wanted to tell you so many times, but I didn't know how to undo something that had gone on for so long." The conversation continued for another hour, with Diana tearfully confessing the full scope of her deception and Sarah struggling to process years of buried anger and confusion. By the end, they had established a fragile understanding. Diana would tell their parents the complete truth about what she had done, and Sarah would decide how she wanted to handle the situation publicly. "There's something else you should know," Sarah said as the conversation was winding down. "I've been nominated for the Kellerman Research Award. The ceremony will be televised internationally. If I win, there will be significant media attention." Diana was quiet for a moment, absorbing the implications. The Kellerman Award was prestigious enough that even she, with her limited knowledge of scientific research, understood its significance. "Sarah, that's incredible," she said, and for the first time in the conversation, her excitement sounded genuine rather than performative. "You deserve that recognition more than anyone." "I just thought you should know that the story about our family might become public if reporters start digging into my background. Academic success stories often include family narratives." "I understand," Diana replied. "And I'll be prepared to tell the truth if anyone asks. It's time for me to take responsibility for what I did." After they hung up, Sarah sat in her apartment, emotionally drained but oddly relieved. The confrontation she had been dreading for months was finally over, and while it hadn't provided the satisfaction she had expected, it had given her something more valuable: closure and the freedom to move forward without the weight of hidden truths. The months leading up to the Kellerman Award ceremony passed quickly, filled with research presentations, media interviews, and the mounting excitement of scientific recognition. Sarah's work on SC47 continued to generate international interest, with pharmaceutical companies offering substantial licensing deals and research institutions competing to recruit her for faculty positions. Dr. Hartman helped Sarah navigate these opportunities while maintaining focus on the fundamental research that had made her success possible. "Remember that you're still a graduate student," she cautioned during one of their meetings. "The recognition is wonderful, but don't let it distract you from completing your dissertation and establishing the foundation for your long-term career." Sarah appreciated the guidance, but she was also aware that her situation had moved beyond typical graduate student concerns. The Kellerman Foundation had informed her 2 weeks before the ceremony that she had been selected as one of 3 finalists for the award, along with a researcher from Johns Hopkins working on Alzheimer's treatment and a team from Stanford developing new surgical techniques. The fact that she was the youngest finalist by nearly a decade and the only one still completing for doctoral studies had generated additional media attention. Science journalists were calling her the rising star of cancer research, and her story was being featured in profiles that emphasized both her innovative work and her unlikely path from a modest state university to international recognition.
What these profiles didn't mention, because Sarah had chosen not to discuss it publicly, was the family history that had shaped her journey. The stolen awards, the systematically hidden opportunities, the years of self-doubt that had made her current success feel almost miraculous. That story remained private, known only to her immediate family and a few trusted mentors. But Sarah was beginning to think that the full truth might be worth sharing, particularly if it could help other young people who might be facing similar obstacles to their own achievement and recognition. The idea of using her platform to discuss not just scientific breakthrough, but also family dynamics and the way success could be undermined by those closest to us seemed both terrifying and potentially powerful. The Kellerman Award ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday evening in Chicago, with the presentation broadcast live to medical schools and research institutions worldwide. Sarah would be expected to give a brief acceptance speech if she won, an opportunity to address thousands of her peers about her research and its implications for cancer treatment. As the ceremony approached, Sarah found herself thinking less about the scientific presentation and more about the personal story that had brought her to this moment. The scared teenager who had lost her first major award had become a confident researcher whose work might change the trajectory of cancer treatment. The journey between those 2 points was a story of resilience, delayed recognition, and ultimately the triumph of authentic achievement over manufactured obstacles. 3 days before the ceremony, Sarah received an unexpected call from a producer at Channel 7's morning show in Boston. The producer had seen the media coverage of Sarah's Kellerman Award nomination and wanted to feature her story as part of their regular segment on local success stories. "We'd love to have you on the show the Monday morning after the awards ceremony. Whether you win or not, your story is inspiring, and our viewers would love to hear about your research and your path to recognition." Sarah hesitated. Television interviews were still new territory for her, and the idea of discussing her work in front of a general audience rather than scientific peers felt daunting. The interview would be live? Yes, live broadcast on Monday morning. It's a more relaxed format than our news segments. You'd have about 15 minutes to discuss your background, your research, and what the recognition means to you. Very conversational, very positive. As they discussed the details, Sarah began to see the television appearance as more than just another media opportunity. It would be a chance to tell her story completely and honestly, to discuss not just her scientific achievements, but also the obstacles she had overcome to reach this point. For the first time, she would have a platform to address the reality of family dynamics that could either support or undermine academic achievement. "I'd like to do the interview," she told the producer, "but I want to be able to discuss some personal aspects of my story that haven't been covered in previous interviews." Of course, personal stories are exactly what our audience connects with. The more authentic and complete your story, the better. After confirming the interview, Sarah called Diana to let her know about the television appearance. Her sister listened quietly as Sarah explained her intention to discuss their family history openly, including the years of hidden achievements and sabotaged opportunities. "Are you sure you want to make this public?" Diana asked. "Once it's on television, you can't take it back." "I'm sure. I think the story might help other people who are dealing with similar situations.
And honestly, I'm tired of protecting everyone else's reputation while hiding the truth about what actually happened." Diana was quiet for a moment. "I understand," she said finally, "and I support your decision. If anyone deserves to tell this story, it's you. I'll be prepared to handle any fallout from my end." The weekend of the awards ceremony arrived with unseasonably warm weather for October in Chicago. Sarah flew in on Friday afternoon, accompanied by Dr. Hartman and her parents, who had insisted on attending despite the complicated family dynamics that the trip would inevitably bring to the surface. The relationship between Sarah and her parents had been strained since the discovery of Diana's deception. While they had expressed horror and regret about the situation, they were still struggling to understand how they had failed to notice what was happening under their own roof. The fact that Diana's achievements had been celebrated while Sarah's had been systematically hidden felt like an indictment of their parenting that they weren't sure how to address. "We're incredibly proud of you," Dr. Chen told Sarah as they checked into their hotel near the conference venue. "I hope you know that, regardless of what happened in the past."
"I know you are now," Sarah replied carefully, "but I also know that it took international recognition for you to really see what I was capable of accomplishing." The comment hung in the air between them, honest but painful. Linda Chen stepped forward to hug her daughter, tears in her eyes. "We failed you," she said simply. "We were so focused on Diana's obvious success that we didn't pay enough attention to your achievements. We should have noticed when your awards disappeared. We should have questioned why someone with your grades and abilities wasn't receiving more recognition." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of other conference attendees, but it had served its purpose. The family dysfunction that had shaped Sarah's early academic experience was finally being acknowledged openly, creating the possibility for more honest relationships moving forward. The award ceremony took place in the grand ballroom of the Palmer House Hilton, with nearly 1,000 attendees representing the international medical research community. Sarah sat at a table near the front with the other finalists, trying to manage her nervousness as various presentations and recognitions filled the evening program. When the moment for the Kellerman Award announcement finally arrived, Sarah felt surprisingly calm. Whether she won or not, she had already accomplished more than she had ever thought possible. The recognition from her peers, the breakthrough research, the opportunity to make a meaningful contribution to cancer treatment, these achievements belonged to her completely and could never be stolen or hidden. The Kellerman Research Award for Breakthrough Contributions to Medical Science, announced the foundation's president, goes to Dr. Sarah Chen of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology for her groundbreaking work on targeted cancer therapy compounds. The applause was thunderous, and Sarah felt herself moving toward the podium as if in a dream. As she accepted the Crystal Award, she thought of the science fair trophy that had disappeared from her desk 15 years earlier, and the journey that had brought her from that moment of loss to this moment of recognition. Her acceptance speech was brief and focused on the scientific implications of her work, but as she looked out at the audience of researchers and medical professionals, she knew that she would soon have an opportunity to tell the complete story, including the personal struggles that had made this moment possible. The celebration continued late into the evening, with colleagues and mentors congratulating Sarah on her achievement and discussing the future directions of her research. Dr. Hartman was beaming with pride, introducing Sarah to prominent researchers who expressed interest in collaboration and recruitment. But even as Sarah enjoyed the recognition and professional opportunities, her mind was already focused on Monday morning's television interview. In less than 48 hours, she would have the chance to share not just her scientific success, but the complete truth about the family dynamics that had shaped her path to achievement. For the first time in her life, Sarah would be able to tell her story without fear of retribution, without concern for protecting family secrets, and without worrying that her achievements might disappear before they could take root. The scared teenager who had lost her first award was about to become the confident woman who could ensure that no one would ever steal her recognition again. Monday morning arrived with the crisp clarity that only October in New England could provide. Sarah awoke in her hotel room at 5:30, her internal clock still adjusted to the excitement and adrenaline of Saturday's award ceremony. The Kellerman Award sat on the nightstand beside her bed, its crystal surface catching the early morning light streaming through the hotel windows. In just 3 hours, she would be sitting across from Jennifer Martinez on Channel 7's morning show, with the opportunity to tell her complete story to thousands of viewers across the region. The weight of that opportunity felt both exhilarating and terrifying. For years, Sarah had kept the truth about Diana's deception private, sharing it only with her immediate family and closest mentors. The decision to reveal it publicly had been made carefully, with full awareness of the potential consequences for everyone involved. But as she prepared for the interview, Sarah felt a sense of rightness about her choice that surprised her with its clarity. She ordered room service breakfast, but found herself too nervous to eat more than a few bites of toast and fruit. Instead, she spent the morning reviewing the key points she wanted to make during the interview, not because she needed notes, but because organizing her thoughts helped calm her nerves. The story she was about to tell would trace an arc from teenage devastation to adult triumph, with stops along the way that included homelessness, academic recovery, groundbreaking research, and ultimately the kind of recognition that could never be stolen or hidden. At 8:15, a car service arrived to transport Sarah to the Channel 7 studios in downtown Boston. The building was sleek and modern, with the kind of professional atmosphere that reminded her of the research facilities where she had spent the past several years of her life. The producer who had arranged the interview, Maria Santos, met Sarah in the lobby and escorted her through the maze of corridors that led to the main studio. "You seem remarkably calm for someone about to do their first live television interview. Most people are much more nervous at this point." Sarah smiled. "I've presented my research to international conferences and peer review committees. After defending your methodology to Nobel Prize winners, television feels manageable." The studio itself was smaller than Sarah had expected, with bright lights arranged around two comfortable chairs positioned at an angle that would allow for natural conversation. Technicians moved efficiently around the space, adjusting cameras and checking audio levels with the kind of practiced precision that reminded Sarah of her own laboratory protocols. Jennifer Martinez appeared exactly as she did on television, professionally dressed and radiating the warm authority that had made her one of Boston's most trusted morning news anchors. She greeted Sarah with genuine enthusiasm, having clearly done her research on both the Kellerman Award and its youngest recipient in recent memory. "Dr. Chen, congratulations again on your incredible achievement. I have to admit, when our research team started looking into your background, we found a story that goes far beyond scientific breakthrough. You've had quite the journey to reach this point." Sarah felt her pulse quicken slightly. The interview hadn't officially begun yet, but Jennifer's comments suggested that the television team had already uncovered some of the complexities in her family history. That could work to her advantage, providing a natural opening to discuss the topics she most wanted to address. It has been an unusual path, not the kind of story that typically gets told about academic success, but perhaps more honest about the obstacles that can shape someone's educational experience. A technician approached to attach a small microphone to Sarah's blazer, and another adjusted the lighting to eliminate shadows from both women's faces. Through the windows of the control room, Sarah could see producers and directors preparing for the live broadcast that would begin in less than 10 minutes.
"We'll start with your recent recognition and then move into your background and research," Jennifer explained. "Feel free to share whatever you're comfortable discussing. Our audience appreciates authenticity, and your story has elements that I think will resonate with a lot of people." The countdown to airtime seemed to pass both slowly and quickly. Sarah used the final minutes to center herself, drawing on techniques she had learned for managing pre-presentation anxiety. She thought about the teenage girl who had frantically searched for her missing science fair trophy, and the woman she had become despite the obstacles placed in her path. This interview was an opportunity to honor both versions of herself. "Good morning and welcome back to Channel 7's Monday Morning Show," Jennifer began, as the red recording light illuminated. "I'm Jennifer Martinez, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Dr. Sarah Chen, who just received the prestigious Kellerman Research Award for her groundbreaking work on cancer treatment. Dr. Chen, congratulations on this incredible recognition." "Thank you, Jennifer. It's an honor to be here." "Let's start with your research, because what you've accomplished is truly remarkable. Can you explain in terms that our viewers can understand what makes your work so significant?" Sarah felt herself settling into the comfortable rhythm of explaining complex concepts to a general audience, a skill she had developed through months of media interviews following her research breakthrough. "I've been working on developing new compounds that can target cancer cells with unprecedented precision," she began. "Think of it like a smart bomb that can find and destroy only the harmful cells while leaving healthy tissue completely untouched. The compound I've developed, which we call SC47, has shown remarkable results in laboratory testing across multiple types of cancer. And this could potentially revolutionize cancer treatment? That's our hope. Current treatments like chemotherapy and radiation often damage healthy cells along with cancerous ones, which creates many of the side effects that make cancer treatment so difficult. Our approach could make treatment more effective while dramatically reducing the physical toll on patients." Jennifer nodded,
her expression reflecting both professional interest and personal engagement with the topic. This level of breakthrough research typically comes from established researchers with decades of experience. You're only 28 years old and still completing your doctoral studies. That's quite unusual, isn't it? It is unusual, Sarah agreed. I think it speaks to the importance of giving young researchers opportunities to pursue innovative ideas, even when they might seem unconventional or risky. Speaking of unconventional paths, your academic journey has been quite remarkable as well. You started at UMass, which is a wonderful institution, but not typically associated with Nobel Prize-level research. How did you end up there? This was the opening Sarah had been waiting for. She took a breath and looked directly into the camera, knowing that her next words would be heard by viewers who might be struggling with their own family dynamics or educational obstacles. That's actually a story I haven't shared publicly before, Jennifer, but I think it's important for people to understand that success can emerge from unexpected circumstances. And sometimes the obstacles we face early in life become the foundation for our greatest achievements. Jennifer leaned forward slightly, recognizing that the interview was about to take a more personal direction. Please, tell us about that journey. I grew up in what appeared to be a very successful academic family. My father is a doctor, my mother is an educator, and my older sister Diana was always the star student. Perfect grades, student government, debate team captain, accepted to Yale. I was the quieter sister, supposedly less gifted, definitely less celebrated. She paused, gathering her thoughts for the revelation that would reshape how viewers understood her story. What I discovered only recently is that my early academic experience was shaped by deception that I was completely unaware of at the time. My first major recognition came when I was 15, when I won first place in our high school science research competition. It was the most significant achievement of my young life, and I was incredibly proud of the work I had done. Sarah's voice remained steady, but Jennifer could see the emotion underlying her words. That night, my award disappeared from my bedroom. The trophy, the certificate, the scholarship check, everything. When I told my family, they suggested that I probably misplaced the items, and we searched the house without finding anything. I was devastated. But more than that, I started to doubt my own memory of the achievement. Jennifer's expression shifted to one of concern and growing understanding. What happened to your award? My sister had taken it, Sarah said simply, along with many other awards and opportunities that followed over the next several years. Letters from colleges expressing interest in my research, invitations to compete at state and national levels, scholarship notifications. All of it was systematically hidden before I could see it or benefit from it. The revelation hung in the air of the studio, and Sarah could see the shock registering on Jennifer's face. In the control room, she knew producers were realizing that this interview was taking a direction none of them had anticipated. Your sister hid your academic achievements? For how long? Throughout high school. Every significant recognition I earned was intercepted and hidden. As a result, my college applications lacked the kind of standout achievements that admissions officers look for. I was waitlisted at most schools and eventually attended UMass with a partial scholarship, while my sister went to Yale with full recognition for her accomplishments. Jennifer was clearly struggling to process the implications of what Sarah was describing. Did you have any idea this was happening? None whatsoever. I internalized the message that I was academically mediocre, that my successes were either flukes or the result of grade inflation. I spent years believing that I wasn't particularly gifted, despite teachers and professors who kept telling me otherwise. How did you discover the truth? Sarah's voice remained steady, but there was an undercurrent of pain that television couldn't hide. 3 years ago, my mother found a box in my sister's old room while cleaning out our family home. It contained all of my missing awards, along with drafted letters where Diana had written out her reasons for hiding my achievements. She was afraid that my obvious scientific talent would overshadow her own success. So she decided to ensure that my accomplishments remained invisible until she had established her own identity and career. The studio was completely silent, except for the quiet hum of cameras and equipment. Jennifer appeared to be processing not just the facts of Sarah's story, but its implications for everything she had believed about family dynamics and academic success.
Dr. Chen, I have to ask, how did this deception affect your education and your path to where you are today? It changed everything, Sarah replied honestly. If I had entered college with my actual achievements on record, I would have had opportunities at top-tier institutions with better research facilities and more prestigious mentorship. I might have started my graduate work several years earlier or pursued different research directions with greater resources. She paused, considering how to articulate the more complex emotional impacts. But perhaps more significantly, it affected my confidence and self-perception for years. I learned not to expect recognition, not to trust my own assessment of my abilities, and not to pursue opportunities that seemed beyond my reach. It took tremendous effort to overcome the psychological impact of believing I was less capable than I actually was. Jennifer shook her head slowly. This is an extraordinary story, Dr. Chen. Have you confronted your sister about this deception? We've had several conversations since the truth came out. Diana has expressed genuine remorse and acknowledgement of the damage her actions caused. She's explained that her behavior started as a temporary measure to ensure her own success, but became a pattern that she found increasingly difficult to break as time went on. And how has this affected your family relationships? Sarah considered the question carefully. The family dynamics remained complicated, with her parents struggling to understand how they had failed to notice the systematic sabotage happening under their roof, and Diana working to rebuild trust that had been fundamentally compromised by years of deception. It's been challenging for everyone involved, she said diplomatically. My parents are grappling with how they missed what was happening, and Diana is facing the consequences of choices she made as a teenager, but continued into adulthood. As for me, I am trying to balance accountability with forgiveness and to focus on moving forward rather than remaining trapped by past injustices. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, clearly moved by the complexity and honesty of Sarah's story. Dr. Chen, given everything you've shared, what message do you have for young people who might be facing obstacles to their own achievement, whether from family dynamics or other sources? This was the question Sarah had most hoped to address during the interview. She looked directly into the camera, speaking to the viewers she couldn't see but knew might be struggling with their own hidden barriers to success. First, trust your own assessment of your abilities. Even when others try to diminish your achievements or convince you that your successes aren't significant, if teachers or mentors are encouraging you, if you're consistently performing well despite limited recognition, those are signs that you have genuine talent that deserves development. She paused, thinking of her own years of self-doubt and the gradual process of rebuilding confidence in her own capabilities. Second, understand that sometimes the people closest to us are not the best judges of our potential. Family dynamics can be complicated, and sometimes family members have their own reasons for minimizing our achievements. That doesn't mean their assessment is accurate or that you should limit your aspirations based on their expectations. Jennifer nodded encouragingly. What about practical advice for students who feel like their achievements aren't being recognized or supported? Document everything, Sarah replied immediately. Keep copies of your awards, grades, teacher recommendations, and any recognition you receive. Build relationships with mentors outside your family who can provide objective feedback about your abilities and potential. And most importantly, don't let anyone convince you to settle for less than what you're capable of achieving. The interview continued for several more minutes, with Sarah discussing the technical aspects of her research and her future plans for developing SC47 into viable cancer treatments. But the personal revelations about family deception and hidden achievements had transformed what was supposed to be a routine success story into something far more complex and compelling.
As the interview concluded, Jennifer thanked Sarah for her candor and courage in sharing such a personal story. Dr. Chen, your breakthrough research is remarkable enough on its own, but your willingness to discuss the obstacles you've overcome makes your success even more inspiring. Thank you for joining us today. When the camera stopped rolling, the studio remained unusually quiet. Sarah could see producers and technicians exchanging glances, clearly aware that they had just witnessed something unprecedented in their typical morning show format. Jennifer approached Sarah as the microphones were being removed. "That was incredibly brave," she said quietly. "I hope you know that your story is going to resonate with a lot of people who have felt invisible in their own families or undermined by people they trusted." Sarah nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension about the public response to her revelations. "I've been carrying this story privately for years. It felt like the right time to share it, especially if it might help other people recognize similar patterns in their own lives." As Sarah left the studio, she was already receiving text messages from friends and colleagues who had watched the interview live. Dr. Hartman had sent a message that simply read, "Proud of you for your courage as well as your research." Professor Williams from UMass had written, "Always knew you were special. Now everyone else will too." But the message that meant the most came from an unexpected source. Diana had texted, "Watching your interview. You told the truth with grace and strength. I'm sorry it took so long for you to have the platform you deserved. Proud to be your sister." The response to Sarah's television appearance was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, video clips of her interview were circulating on social media platforms, with viewers sharing their own stories of family dynamics that had undermined their academic or professional achievements. The hashtag Hidden Achievements began trending as people discussed the various ways that recognition could be stolen, minimized, or diverted by family members with their own agendas. Educational psychologists and family counselors began reaching out to media outlets to discuss the broader implications of Sarah's story. Dr. Amanda Foster, a researcher specializing in sibling dynamics and academic achievement, appeared on several news programs to explain how family systems could inadvertently or deliberately undermine individual success. What Dr. Chen experienced is more common than people realize, Dr. Foster explained during an interview with a national news network. Families often develop unofficial hierarchies where one child is designated as the achiever, while others are cast in supporting roles. When a child in a supporting role begins to outshine the designated star, it can create family tension that gets resolved in destructive ways. The media attention extended beyond the personal aspects of Sarah's story to include serious discussion of her research and the implications for cancer treatment. Major medical journals featured editorials about her work, and pharmaceutical companies that had been negotiating quietly for licensing rights now found themselves competing publicly for partnerships with the young researcher whose breakthrough might revolutionize oncology.
Sarah handled the attention with the same methodical approach she brought to her laboratory work. She accepted interview requests selectively, focusing on opportunities to discuss both her research and the broader issues of family dynamics and educational obstacles. She declined offers for book deals and speaking engagements that seemed designed to sensationalize her story rather than contribute to meaningful conversations about academic achievement and family support. 3 weeks after the Channel 7 interview, Sarah received a phone call that surprised her more than any of the media attention or professional opportunities that had followed her public revelation. The caller was Dr. Rebecca Walsh, the oncologist who had served as a judge at her high school science competition 15 years earlier. "Dr. Chen, this is Rebecca Walsh from Massachusetts General Hospital. I don't know if you remember me, but I was one of the judges at your science fair when you were in high school." Sarah's breath caught. "Dr. Walsh, of course I remember you. You encouraged me to submit my work to the National Youth Science Foundation." "I did, and I've been following your career with great interest ever since. When I saw your interview last week and learned about what happened to your early achievements, I felt compelled to reach out. I kept notes from that science competition, and I want you to know that your work that day was genuinely extraordinary for a high school student." Dr. Walsh's voice carried a warmth that transported Sarah back to that day when her research had been recognized and celebrated, before the award disappeared and she learned to doubt her own accomplishments. "I actually tried to follow up with you several times over the years," Dr. Walsh continued. "I sent letters to your high school asking about your college plans and offering mentorship opportunities. I never received responses, and I eventually assumed you had pursued other interests." "Those letters never reached me," Sarah said, her voice tight with the realization of yet another opportunity that had been intercepted and hidden. "I suspected as much after seeing your interview. Dr. Chen, I want you to know that even at 15, your research showed the kind of innovative thinking that characterizes breakthrough scientists. What you've accomplished now is remarkable, but it's not surprising to those of us who recognized your potential early on." The conversation continued for nearly an hour, with Dr. Walsh sharing her memories of Sarah's original research and expressing her admiration for the path Sarah had carved despite the obstacles placed in her way. By the time they hung up, Sarah felt a sense of closure about her early scientific work that she hadn't realized she needed. The validation from Dr. Walsh was followed by similar contact from other figures from Sarah's past. Mrs. Rodriguez, her high school chemistry teacher, reached out to express her pride in Sarah's achievements and to share that she had always wondered why Sarah had seemed to lose confidence in her scientific abilities during her junior and senior years. Several professors from UMass contacted her to say that they had recognized her exceptional potential from the beginning and were thrilled to see her receiving the recognition she deserved. These conversations helped Sarah understand that the pattern of undermined achievement had been visible to many of the adults in her educational environment, but they had lacked the information needed to intervene effectively. The conspiracy of silence that had surrounded Diana's deception had prevented mentors and teachers from providing the support and encouragement that might have changed Sarah's educational trajectory. As the immediate media attention began to subside, Sarah found herself processing not just the public response to her story, but the personal transformation that had occurred through telling it. For years, she had carried the shame and confusion of believing herself to be less capable than she actually was. The decision to reveal the truth publicly had lifted that burden in ways she hadn't anticipated. The relationship with her family continued to evolve as well. Diana had taken a leave of absence from her law firm to undergo counseling aimed at understanding the psychological factors that had led to her years of deception. Their parents had begun family therapy to address the systemic failures that had allowed the sabotage to continue undetected for so long. These conversations were painful but necessary. Dr. Chen struggled with guilt about his failure to notice the disappearance of Sarah's achievements, while Linda Chen grappled with questions about whether her own focus on Diana's success had inadvertently contributed to the family dynamics that made the deception possible. "I keep thinking about all the times you tried to tell us about missing awards or lost opportunities. We dismissed your concerns because Diana's success was so visible, and yours seemed less consistent. We should have investigated every disappearance, every lost letter, every missed opportunity." Sarah found herself in the unexpected position of comforting her parents while also holding them accountable for their role in the family system that had enabled Diana's behavior. It was a delicate balance, requiring her to acknowledge their limitations without excusing the impact of their choices on her development. "I don't think anyone could have predicted the scope of what Diana was doing," Sarah said carefully. "But I do think there were signs that the family was more focused on celebrating obvious success than on nurturing potential that might not have been as immediately visible." Diana herself was working to understand the psychological factors that had motivated her initial decision to hide Sarah's award and the subsequent choices that had extended the deception for years. In therapy, she was exploring her own feelings of inadequacy and the pressure she had felt to maintain her position as the family's academic star.
I was terrified that if people saw how smart Sarah really was, they would realize that my achievements were based more on hard work than natural talent. Diana explained during one family session. I told myself that I just needed time to establish my own identity, but the truth was that I was afraid of being overshadowed by someone who made difficult things look effortless. The family therapy sessions were challenging for everyone involved, but they also created opportunities for honest communication that had been absent throughout the sisters' childhood and adolescence. For the first time, they were able to discuss the competitive dynamics that had shaped their relationship and the unspoken expectations that had influenced their respective paths. Sarah's professional life, meanwhile, continued to flourish in ways that exceeded even her revised expectations. The Kellerman Award had opened doors to research opportunities at the highest levels of scientific achievement. She was invited to join collaborative projects with Nobel Prize winners, offered faculty positions at prestigious universities, and courted by pharmaceutical companies eager to develop her breakthrough compounds into viable treatments. The decision about her next career step required careful consideration of multiple factors. Sarah wanted to continue her research in an environment that would provide the resources and support necessary for developing SC47 into effective cancer treatments. But she also wanted to maintain the independence and creativity that had characterized her most successful work. After extensive discussions with Dr. Hardman and other mentors, Sarah accepted a unique opportunity that combined several attractive elements. She would join the faculty at Harvard Medical School as an associate professor, with her own laboratory and substantial research funding. Additionally, she would maintain collaborative relationships with pharmaceutical companies working to bring her compounds to clinical trials, ensuring that her research could transition from laboratory discovery to patient treatment. The position represented everything Sarah had once thought was beyond her reach. Harvard Medical School was exactly the kind of institution that should have been accessible to her as an undergraduate if her early achievements had been properly documented and recognized. The irony was not lost on her that she was arriving at Harvard with international recognition and breakthrough research, despite taking a circuitous path that had delayed her progress by several years. 6 months after her television interview, Sarah stood in her new laboratory at Harvard, supervising the installation of equipment that would allow her to continue developing SC47 and related compounds. The space was larger and better equipped than anything she had worked in previously, with access to resources that would accelerate her research timeline. Dr. Hartman had accompanied Sarah to Harvard for the laboratory setup, officially transitioning her former student into an independent research career.
As they watched technicians calibrate sophisticated instruments, Dr. Hartman reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. You know, Sarah, I've been thinking about your story and its implications for how we identify and nurture scientific talent, she said. Your experience suggests that we might be missing other exceptional students who are being undermined by family dynamics or other hidden obstacles. Sarah nodded, having come to similar conclusions during the months of media attention that had followed her public revelation. I've been contacted by dozens of students and young professionals who recognize similar patterns in their own lives. People whose achievements have been minimized, whose opportunities have been diverted, whose confidence has been systematically undermined by family members or others who should have been supporting them. The recognition that her experience was not unique had led Sarah to begin developing ideas for addressing these issues systematically. She was planning to establish a foundation that would provide support and resources for students whose achievements were being undermined or hidden, creating pathways for recognition and opportunity that could bypass family gatekeepers. I keep thinking about all the potential that's being lost when talented people are convinced they're mediocre, Sarah continued. How many breakthrough discoveries aren't happening because the people capable of making them have been taught not to trust their own abilities? The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Sarah's first graduate student, a young woman named Jennifer Park, whose undergraduate research had shown the kind of innovative thinking that Sarah recognized as exceptional. Jennifer had contacted Sarah after seeing her television interview, explaining that she was struggling with family members who discouraged her scientific aspirations and suggested she pursue more traditionally feminine career paths. Dr. Chen, I can't believe I'm actually here, Jennifer said as she looked around the laboratory. 6 months ago, I was ready to give up on research because everyone kept telling me I wasn't cut out for it. Your interview changed everything for me. Sarah smiled, remembering her own moments of doubt and the mentors who had believed in her potential when she couldn't see it herself. Jennifer, the most important thing I can tell you is that your work will speak for itself. Don't let anyone convince you that your achievements aren't significant or that your aspirations are unrealistic. As the day progressed, Sarah found herself thinking about the 15-year-old girl who had lost her first major award and the journey that had brought her to this moment of professional recognition and personal triumph. The path had been longer and more difficult than it should have been, marked by obstacles that had been deliberately placed in her way by someone she had trusted completely. But the circuitous route had also given her insights and resilience that might not have developed under easier circumstances. She understood viscerally how family dynamics could undermine individual achievement, how systematic discouragement could erode confidence, and how important it was for talented people to find mentors and supporters outside their immediate family systems. The laboratory was nearly ready for operation, with instruments calibrated and safety protocols established. Sarah's research could resume with better resources and greater support than she had ever previously enjoyed. The work on SC47 would continue, with expanded studies that could bring the compound closer to clinical applications. But perhaps more importantly, the laboratory would also serve as a space for nurturing young researchers whose potential might otherwise be overlooked or undermined. Sarah was committed to creating an environment where achievement was celebrated rather than hidden, where innovation was encouraged rather than discouraged, and where talented people could develop their abilities without fear that their success would be stolen or diminished. 3 months later, Sarah received news that SC47 had been approved for preliminary clinical trials, marking the beginning of the process that could eventually bring her breakthrough research to cancer patients around the world. The announcement generated international media attention, with medical journals and news outlets highlighting the potential for revolutionary changes in cancer treatment. The clinical trials would be conducted at multiple medical centers, with Sarah serving as the primary investigator overseeing the study design and data analysis. It was exactly the kind of responsibility that she had once thought was beyond her reach, requiring her to coordinate with leading oncologists and pharmaceutical executives while maintaining the scientific rigor that had made her research successful. As she prepared for the expanded role, Sarah reflected on the distance she had traveled from the confused teenager who had searched frantically for her missing science fair trophy. That girl had internalized the message that her achievements were unreliable and that recognition would always be temporary. The woman she had become understood that genuine achievement could not be stolen or hidden indefinitely, and that the most important recognition came from the knowledge that her work could make a meaningful difference in the world. The decision to reveal her family's deception publicly had been one of the most difficult choices of her life, but it had also been one of the most liberating. For the first time, she could discuss her achievements without fear that they would disappear, could pursue opportunities without wondering if they would be sabotaged, and could trust her own assessment of her abilities without the doubt that had plagued her for years. The story she had shared on television had resonated with thousands of viewers who recognized similar patterns in their own lives. The support and validation she had received from people who understood her experience had helped heal wounds that she hadn't fully acknowledged until they began to close. Diana had completed her counseling program and was working to rebuild not just her relationship with Sarah, but her own understanding of her own motivations and behavior patterns. The process was slow and sometimes painful, but it was also necessary for creating the possibility of authentic connection between the sisters. Their parents had made significant changes in their own perspectives and behavior, recognizing that their focus on obvious success had blinded them to more subtle forms of achievement and potential. The family dynamics were still evolving, but they were now based on honesty,
rather than hidden deceptions and unspoken competitions. Sarah's new position at Harvard provided her with the platform and resources to pursue both her research goals and her broader mission of supporting students whose achievements might be undermined by family dynamics or other hidden obstacles. The foundation she was establishing would offer scholarships, mentorship, and advocacy for young people whose potential was not being recognized or supported by their immediate families. On a warm spring evening, exactly 1 year after her appearance on Channel 7's morning show, Sarah stood on the balcony of her new apartment near Harvard Medical School, looking out over the city where her academic journey had taken an unexpected turn toward international recognition and professional triumph. The Kellerman Award sat on her desk inside, no longer the singular focus of her achievements, but rather one milestone among many in a career that was still unfolding. The teenage girl who had lost her first major award had become the confident woman who could ensure that no one would ever steal her recognition again. But more than that, she had become someone who could help others recognize and develop their own potential, regardless of the obstacles placed in their path by people who should have been their strongest supporters. The research on SC47 continued to show promise in early clinical trials, with results suggesting that Sarah's breakthrough might indeed revolutionize cancer treatment for millions of patients worldwide. The laboratory she directed was attracting talented young researchers from around the globe, many of whom had been inspired by her story to pursue scientific careers despite discouragement from family members or educational institutions. The foundation she had established was already supporting dozens of students whose achievements had been undermined or hidden, providing them with the recognition and opportunities they needed to develop their potential fully. Each success story from the foundation's recipients reminded Sarah of the importance of her decision to share her own experience publicly. As she watched the lights come on across the city, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment and the future that stretched ahead. The path had been longer and more difficult than it should have been, marked by obstacles that had been deliberately placed in her way by someone she had trusted completely. But the circuitous route had also given her insights and resilience that might not have developed under easier circumstances. She understood viscerally how family dynamics could undermine individual achievement, how systematic discouragement could erode confidence, and how important it was for talented people to find mentors and supporters outside their immediate family systems. Tomorrow would bring new experiments, new challenges, and new opportunities to mentor the next generation of researchers. The work on SC47 would continue its progression toward potentially life-saving treatments for cancer patients. The laboratory she directed was attracting talented young researchers from around the globe, many of whom had been inspired by her story to pursue scientific careers despite discouragement from family members or educational institutions. The foundation she had established was already supporting dozens of students whose achievements had been undermined or hidden, providing them with the recognition and opportunities they needed to develop their potential fully. Each success story from the foundation's recipients reminded Sarah of the importance of her decision to share her own experience publicly.